Celestine,
Mm-hmm.
I would want to go a little early than later in the lineup.
You got the hookup, girlfriend.
What's that mean?
You got it.
Oh,
You got it.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Indy Story Slam. It's produced by Freetown Village and Storytelling Arts of Indiana. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Jim Obermaier and Sally Perkins, and the Nicholas Noyes Jr. Memorial Foundation. And let's not forget our media sponsor, WFYI. Now, these stories tonight must be true. I know the Liars Contest is not until August, or is it July at the beginning of the state fair?
August 6th.
August 6th? Okay. Um, Tonight, our theme is Welcome to America. It cannot be longer than 5 minutes, and it must be told in the first person. Now, listen, when we ask you to come and tell these stories, we dangle a little carrot in front of you. It's called cash. You have prizes. Our first place winner will receive 50 whole bucks. Our second place winner will receive $25. And our third place winner receives $10. And $10 could buy at least one cup of coffee at Starbucks. We are honored that we have our judges tonight, Michelle Goodrich, Alice Mattingly, and Becky Ryder. Thank you for coming, hanging out. But our first teller is not to be judged. Our first teller who is honoring us with a story on this topic is our one and only Executive Director of Storytelling Arts of Indiana, Ellen Muns. Let's welcome her to the mic.
Okay, so I thought I would tell a story today because we're a little short on storytellers. But I was traveling home from London, and I landed in Washington, D.C., and there was weather problems, so my flight was very late. But when I got onto the airplane, my seat was next to this young man who spent all of his time on his cell phone. I didn't really think that much about it. And I'm an introvert, so I don't really talk to whoever I'm sitting next to. I might say hi, whatever. But 3/4 through the flight, somehow we started talking, and it turned out he was from Mongolia. And he was coming to Indianapolis to take the bus because he was going to work up at Lake Schaefer. And I thought, how would anybody from Mongolia learn about Lake Schaefer? So he had been spending some time in Washington, D.C. At the airport, just like I had because our flight was delayed. But he had met a man in a restaurant who was from Washington, D.C., who talked to him and actually gave him a couple $100 for his trip, just to be nice. And as we're landing, I said to him, where are you going to stay tonight? Because it was midnight. You're not going to be able to take a bus at midnight. And he goes, I think I'm going to sleep in the airport. And I said, okay, I'm going to ask you a question. You should be afraid of this question, but if you trust me. And I said, do you want to come home with me and sleep at my house? And he jumped at the chance. And I kept saying to him, you really shouldn't accept a place to stay from a stranger. But, he was young and he was innocent, and I wasn't going to do anything to him. So we got into my car, and instead of going on the highway, I took him through town because he was taking photographs of everything. And that's why he was on his phone the whole time. He had been taking photographs in the airport in Washington, D.C. So he kept going through his photographs and things. So we drove through downtown Indianapolis, and then we got to my house, and I gave him a bedroom, and I heard him talking to his parents on the phone, and we went to sleep. And by then it was 1:30. And I heard him the next morning. He was up pretty early. And in my mind, I'm thinking, now what am I going to do with him? I had just gotten back from a trip. I just really wanted to do my laundry and lay on the couch. So I said to him, let's go down to the bus station and get your ticket, get that all settled. I'll take you for breakfast. So we did that, and his bus wasn't going to leave for several hours, longer than I wanted to be with him. I mean, I was trying to be nice, but I had a limit to my time. So I took him to a breakfast place, and I ordered a breakfast that had French toast, eggs, potatoes, what else? Toast, so that he could try an American breakfast, bacon. He loved the French toast because it was so sweet. So then I took him back. We went back to the bus station, and I walked around looking for somebody who might be going on his same bus to make sure he got on the right bus. And nobody would help him. So I did my best trying to get him to, so he would know which bus to get on, which gate. And then I left him at the airport. I left him at the bus stop. But, and then I went home, and I probably took a nap. But I did hear from him several times, and he hated Lake Schaefer. He ended up going to Chicago with some friends and working there. But then I heard from him, the last time I heard from him, it was before his time was up to be in the United States. But he was back at the airport because his father had died unexpectedly in a car accident. And so he was on his way home. And that's my story of Welcome to America.
That was good. You know, when I first read the topic, Welcome to America, I just thought about the Eddie Murphy movie, Coming to America, was my first thought, because that's where my mind goes. Thank you so very much, Ellen. Well, now you see how it's done. Now I'm ready for our very first storyteller. Carol, you moved on my screen. Carol Bussell is our next teller. Welcome, Carol.
Just checking my mute. Am I on?
Yes.
All right. This one I would call A Good Day for Papa Matruski. Where we do our work in the summer is a concert village, a part of New York City, and it's also international. And when we went to one of the concerts about 5 days ago, we were going to go see a student rendition of The Marriage of Figaro. These students are all Juilliard kids, and these kids are really, really good. And in the orchestra, these are kids from Oberlin, Eastman, Juilliard. We're talking kids who are going to be in our orchestras and in our operas in the next few years. These kids are really, really good. Well, it was a beautiful day, and it was sunshiny, and the wind was gentle. We were going to have a great walk down to the amphitheater, which is about 12 minutes from where we park. It's like a college campus. You go downhill to halfway to the lake, and the park. And when we started into the grounds, this is all gated community because the gate pass is worth quite a bit of money, so you can get all the concerts for free. There was a car in front of us, and the line had stopped. And the guy in the little watchtower thing said, he kept directing away from all of us. And we're going, okay, poor guy. He's not in the right place. And when he finally turned around, I looked and I got a look at him. He had very black hair, heavy black brows, and frosting on his sideburns. And off he went. My husband and I were on our way to this little opera, and we didn't think anything of it until we got all the way down to like maybe 3 minutes away. Now we're, an arts quad away, and then there's going to be the amphitheater. And wouldn't you know, the vice president of all performance was the one he asked directions for. And he's walking in the wrong direction. And Deborah saw us come and she turned around and she said, "You're in good hands. Go with them." Now, something to think about is the guy had a very strong accent. Anyway, we're walking with him and he says, "I'm going to see my daughter Alexis." And we're going, "Wonderful." And she plays the viola, not the violin, the viola. Yes, that sounds great. And she's in the orchestra. Yes, she is. We get them all the way down to the amphitheater. Now, the amphitheater is COVID managed, and y'all had to have a pass. It's like, it looks like an ID tag, and then you have a sticker on it for your COVID vaccination so you can sit inside. And he had to get some kind of verification, and luckily just a few steps away from the amp away was the vaccination verification. He had everything on his phone. This guy was so prepared. So he comes back to the gate and shows his ticket. He shows his vaccination, and the gatekeeper lets him in. And the reason I'm calling this is a good day for Papa Matruski is, think about it. He first goes to the wrong gate, but he gets to the right gate. He gets inside and he gets a parking spot where people don't get allowed to park, but he gets a 3-hour pass to park. Then he's at the amphitheater. His phone has all the pieces he needs to get in the place. This is a good day for Papa Matruski. Then, as we're walking in, there's this big poster, and we all put our phone up like this, and we take a picture of this little squarish barcode, and that's the program, paperless programs now. And I looked, and there was his daughter, principal violist. Man, what a beautiful day for Papa Matruski. He's going in to see his daughter play principal. And, she didn't get to do it every time because this opera is 4 hours long. Can you imagine practicing and learning the music for a 4-hour presentation? Now, the opera kids decided to make a condensed version. So every so often, 2 kids would run on stage and say, "Now we're at Act 2 and such and so. Here's the synopsis of what you caught up on." Anyway, the opera was only an hour and a half. Papa Matruski did not want to sit with us. No, he went all the way down to the very front. You could see his camera glowing. You could see him. And before the performance, he's waving at his daughter. My eyes, tears are in my eyes. It was exciting. And afterwards, I asked him, "So where are you from?" He says, "I'm from Albania." It's like, oh, wow. And he's, Kosovo, Albania. He was probably a refugee, and his kid is now at Oberlin, now playing in one of the best student orchestras in the country. She's going to become something special. And I would have to say, when Papa Matruski saw his daughter Alexis that day, it just warmed my heart that I was part of his wonderful day and his chance to see his daughter in her road to becoming a wonderful artist in an orchestra. Thank you.
That was wonderful, just wonderful. I believe people are put in each other's paths for a reason, and you were in the right place at the right time. Yes. Thank you so much, Carol. Well, now our next teller is Leslie O. Leslie, how you doing? You need to turn your sound on, Leslie, so we can hear you.
I'm sure I do. I'm going to tell a Christmas story out of season. I'm going to tell it because I made Christmas cards for 50 years, handmade them. And it was such an elaborate production every year that I started the process in October sometimes. One of the fights that my husband and I had was over our Christmas card list. I thought they should go only to our family and intimate friends. However, Tom considered anyone he'd ever met his intimate friend. So we sent him to his grade school friends and his high school friends and his Harvard friends and all of his friends and everybody he ever worked with or met on the street. And sometimes our Christmas card lists total 350 cards or more. And I handmade each one of them. That's why I started early. My Christmas cards varied over 50 years. I can't really tell you what they were like because they went through so many different phases. We were at the University of Chicago, and I went through the intellectual phase of quoting big literature. Then I went through the deeply mystical religion phase. Then I went through the silly phase, kind of like Disney. And I just kind of went through all these phases. And this card that I want to tell you about is a very particular card because this year I decided that I wanted to do something that was so different, so uncharacteristic of me, that it would shock people and make them laugh their heads off. And I had the theme in mind. Now, we lived in Providence, Rhode Island, and our Kinko's copy store served the RISD students, Rhode Island School of Design students, who almost took up residence there. So when I went in, I always had the opportunity of discussing with a handful of artists the best way to enhance the image of a card. And finally, it was decided that I should make a page of clothes for both, lots of clothes on one page, more than one set for each character, for Mr. and Mrs. Claus. That it would be easier to make them all on one page, hundreds of them, pick 5, 6 pages, and cut them out and paste them on my card than it would be to print a card the way I wanted it. So I came home with a wad full of Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus clothes. The only thing is that these things were so teeny, I had to cut them out with nail scissors. Now you can see why I started this process in October. Well, I cut them all out and I glued them on my card. Thus how I took my page like this and folded it in thirds. And the front said, Merry Christmas in bright red markers. And then I opened it and I said, and to all a good, and I wish you all, and at the end it said, a good night. And I took these cards and cut these little teeny clothes out, and I strew them with glue over the first 3 pages of my card. I wanted to look as if they had just been thrown impulsively at random in a big hurry and in a big flurry, in a big mess. There was supposed to be nothing attractive about this. And then we got to the last page and I made a gold rectangle. I painted it with gold paint with a keyhole. And when you looked through the keyhole, you saw Mr. and Mrs. Claus making love. And all a good night. Well, the next thing I had to do was run this by my very good friend and mentor, who I'm considered a genuine art critic. She was the kind of person that could stand in the middle of the room and not say a word and nurture the art just by her presence. And she always looked at my artwork and gave me her criticism, no matter how scathing or awful it might be. And I trusted her completely. So I called her on the phone and said, Kathy, I want you to come over to my house and I want to show you something. And I watched her door open and she walked down the front stairs and walked up my front stairs and my doorbell rang. And the minute she opened the door, I handed her the card. Well, I left the room. I wasn't going to stand around and watch her critique my artwork right in front of me. And I waited and I waited. And finally, I heard this riotous laughter coming from the living room. And I thought, it's probably safe to go in and see what she has to say. So I went in, and she was laughing so hard she couldn't stop, and it was contagious. And the two of us laughed until we cried. We cried, and finally we were finished. We wiped the tears off our faces and had a cup of coffee, and Kathy said she had to go home. Well, as she was leaving my house, she opened the door and she went out, but she didn't go all the way out. And she stuck her head around the door, and I couldn't see all of her face, but I heard her booming voice, and she said, "Leslie, oh, I'm disappointed in you." Well, my euphoria popped like a balloon, boom, and lay dead on the floor. I was just crushed. And I said, "Oh, Kathy, did I offend you? Did I do something wrong? Please tell me." And she didn't say anything. And finally, she stuck her head all the way around the door so I could see her malicious wink. And she said, "You put the man on top." Oh, my dear. I couldn't believe that I had made such a horrible mistake. I mean, for months, and actually a few years before that, the newspapers and the women's magazines were featuring articles saying that women need to take charge of their own sexual lives, that women had their own ideas about how it should go in bed, and it shouldn't always be the missionary style, you know. And I felt dated. I felt like I had come from the land of dinosaurs, and I had been called on this woman who happened to be 20 years older than myself. How humiliating. Well, she left me. This card was a prototype. I had 349 more to make. And you know something? I corrected my error. I redid the keyhole all over again. And when I was finished, Mrs. Claus was on top. You better bet your bippy she was. And I put a little footnote at the bottom of the card, and I said, "I thank Kathy Perkins, my beloved miniature."
Oh, what I wouldn't give for one of those cards. Thank you so much, Leslie. That's
They accomplished my goal. They surprised people.
Do you still make those cards?
No, I haven't made.
No? Well, guess what? Our next teller is Julie. Julie, I'm going to mess up your last name. Lawani?
No, you got it right. Lawani.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie. Nice to see you again.
It's good to see you. Yesterday's failures are today's lessons and tomorrow's guides. I lost my dad in 2013. He came to this country with $7 in his pocket and hoped for a better life for all of us. We knew as a family of immigrants that we were going to struggle. We just didn't know how much. So about 20 years ago, I remember taking a road trip from South Bend, Indiana to Cleveland, Ohio. My dad's business had been hemorrhaging money for the better part of a decade, and he had only one contract, only one client, in fact, left, who happened to be the business in Cleveland, and they wanted to talk about their contract. So my older sister and I sat in the back seat, and we proceeded to listen to my parents strategize how my dad was not only going to extend the contract, but actually increase the scope of it, because he was already the cheaper option. So there was no reason to believe that there was going to be anything but a celebration, which is why we all went as a family. So we get to Cleveland. My dad drops us off at this Cleveland Mall where there's this huge playground for children. And he gets changed into the only suit that he owns. It's a black suit, and he would always wear a red silk handkerchief in the pocket. And he said, I'll be gone for a few hours, but when we come back, we will celebrate as a family. So I knew something was wrong, because instead of a couple hours, he was back within the hour. And as he was walking towards us, I noticed he was making this pulling motion to his body. When I got within earshot of my parents, I overheard my dad say, they're not extending the contract. They called me to cancel it. And I think my mom didn't understand what that meant, because she just kept repeating, if they cancel it, what will we do for money? If they cancel it, what will we do for money? And my dad said, I have no idea, but let's go home and we'll figure it out. I looked over at my sister, who was absolutely terrified, because she knew exactly what this meant for our family, but she didn't say anything. And all of them started to proceed to walk towards the exit. I, however, turned around and walked and looked out the window. At some point, my dad must have noticed that I wasn't with them, and he came and he found me and he said, Julia, come on, it's time to go. I turned to him with tears streaming down my cheeks, and I said, I'm not going anywhere with you. And my dad said, what happened? And I said, Daddy, I'm sick and tired of being poor. I'm tired of lying to my friends that I don't want to go to their birthday parties, when the truth is we can't afford a gift. I'm tired of being concerned that we might not have enough food to buy, or we might not have enough money to buy food for the school lunches. I said, but I'm especially tired of watching mommy wait for you to go to bed so she can cry because she's worried sick that we're going to get kicked out of our house the next day. My dad paused. He sighed, he put a hand on each of my shoulders, and he said, Julia, I know it's hard, but I promise I will get us through this. Do you trust me? Do you believe in me, Julie? I looked at him, I smiled, and I said, absolutely not. And my dad laughed. He said, all right, fair enough. He said, will you at least have ice cream with me then? And I said, yeah, what kind of maniac says no ice cream? So all six of us shared this tiny cup, this one scoop of ice cream amongst the six of us. And then we schlepped ourselves back all the way to South Bend. And then we proceeded as a family to struggle for another decade financially. But my dad was right. Eventually, he did turn things around. And I would say maybe a year before I lost him, we were sitting at his kitchen table because my parents had since bought this ridiculously huge house. And I was reading this contract from a major investment banking firm because they wanted to purchase my dad's business for in excess of $50 million. And I wanted to make sure that they weren't taking advantage of my dad. And he was sitting next to me and he said, Julia, do you remember that day in Cleveland, that day I lost that big contract? I looked up and I said, yeah, I remember. He held out his hand. I gave him mine. And he said, Julie, there will come a time very soon where I will be nothing but a memory to you. And if you have the life that I want you to have, you're going to get challenged and you're going to struggle a lot. So I want you to remember in those moments when you feel all alone, that yesterday's failures are today's lessons and tomorrow's guides. Thank you.
That was beautiful. That was just beautiful. What kind of business was he in?
He was actually in a manufacturing business. And if you remember in Indiana, we used to have this big manufacturing sector in the Midwest, and then the bottom fell out when the market conditions changed and the, different, you could outsource and make things at a tenth of what it would cost to make them here. So.
Yeah, that was a wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing. Well, our next teller is Beverly Williams. Beverly, we're ready to listen to you.
Hello, everybody. So my coming to America story starts with our next door neighbor who became a family member. Jeanette was her name, but I called her TT Jan. She came from British Honduras. And her and my mom became fast friends. And she fell in love with an American guy. She was so in love with this guy. And so her and my mom, they were like sisters. And my mom was a chef. She was a chef downtown at the Blackstone Hotel. If anybody has ever been to Chicago, it is one of the best hotel, and still is one of the best hotels for banquets. And my mother, if you ever ate there, was the one that cooked your food. My mother also worked at Lori's Steakhouse and the Signature Room. The Signature Room sits up on top of the John Hancock building. It is actually a rotating restaurant, and it rotates the city. Well, Jeanette, she wanted to go to a fancy restaurant. So she told my mom, she said, I said, hey, Ann, I want to go chase the thief. So my mom said, what she say, Bev? I said, she want to go taste the beef. My mother never understood anything Jeanette said. I want to go chase the thief. I want to go to fancy restaurant. She want to go to fancy restaurant. So my mom said, okay, I'll make you reservations for the Lori Steakhouse. So she makes this fancy reservations for the Lori Steakhouse. And Jeanette and her boyfriend, they go to taste the thief. They go to taste the beef. So they go to this fancy restaurant. And of course, if you've ever been to Chicago and to the Lori Steakhouse, it is a wonderful thing. Of course, I went because my mother was one of the chefs. And what they do is they will bring you the teeth, as Jeanette called it, which is beef, to your table and cut what you want. Well, Jeanette didn't know, I guess she didn't realize really the price. So Jeanette walked out of the door with only $100. Now, anybody that's been to the Lori Steakhouse, you're not spending $100, okay? You're spending more than $100. So they're at the table, and I'm sure they're chasing the teeth. They're tasting the beef, and they're eating those wonderful garlic mashed potatoes and those beautiful shiny green beans. And I'm sure they're just having a good time eating. Well, it came to the end of the meal, and there were no prices on the menu. So Jeanette didn't know what it cost. Well, when her and her wonderful person that she loved, I call him person because I wasn't a fan of his, but Jeanette loved him. And so they got the bill and they realized, oh my God, we cannot pay this bill. Well, back in the day, we didn't have cell phones. So Jeanette, she goes to a payphone and she calls my mother. And she says, I choked no chill. My mother says, what did she say, Belle? I said, she's saying she can't pay no bill. So my mother said, well, why can't you pay no bill? She said, cost to touch. She said, cost to touch. I said, Mama, she said, cost too much. So my mother knew the man that ran the kitchen. So she called. And she told him that this is my friend. She's from British Honduras. She doesn't know how much it costs to really eat here. She just wanted a fancy dinner. So the guy says, well, she has to pay this bill, Ann. And she says, well, hey, she really doesn't have a job. I know you got something back there for her to do. So he goes, well, yes, actually my dishwasher quit. My mother says, well, hey, she ain't got no job. She ain't got nowhere to be in the morning. Let her wash the dishes. So they go to the table and they tell Jeanette, they say, hey, we have a job for you. She said, job? No job. Me can't chase the chill. He said, chase the chill. She was saying she couldn't pay the bill. He said, but you can wash the dishes. And that was her coming to America story.
Oh, glory. That's coming to America for real.
Yes.
Um, mm, mm, mm. That's these. Anybody else in the group want to tell stories? I see Miss Ophelia there. I know you got a story, girl. Don't act like you don't hear me. Miss Ophelia, she trying to look at me. Come on, girl. Do you have a coming to America story?
I am the timekeeper. I am trying to keep the time. I'm focused. I got to get this done before I forget what I'm supposed to do. And I really don't have a story.
All right.
I was trying to think of one, but I don't have one.
I keep thinking of all the people in my family who have married folks from other countries. Like when my niece got married before she graduated from Manchester College. And I said, well, why can't you and Joseph wait? Why are you getting married? Are you pregnant? And she says, no, Auntie, I said, don't cuss at me. Don't cuss at me. So they did get married and they had a little baby girl. And they both graduated from Manchester. And my niece graduated holding that baby, you know, in her arms because they dared her to come to graduation without bringing little Deja. And Deja has now graduated from Manchester University, the same school that her mother and father went to, summa cum laude, and she's a CPA and lives in Columbus, Ohio. So that's the closest coming to America story that I can get, because her husband, Joseph, was from Ghana. Well, Alice, I heard a little birdie tell me that tomorrow is your birthday. Girl, I know we need to sing to you because she will be 39 again. She'll be 39 and we need to sing happy birthday to you. You know what I'm saying? A happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Alice. Happy birthday to you. And many more. I hope you have a great one. Eat lots of cake and drink wine, okay? Not necessarily together. They don't go together.
Thank you very much.
Listen, I want to remind you that our next session next month is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. It is called School Nightmares. And it is going to take place on August 18th at 7 p.m. Now, I know this is off the subject. You know, I'm retired, but I have been having school nightmares. I dream that I got locked in Craig Middle School and the FBI was there and I couldn't get out to go to an interview. The next day I had another dream, a school dream. I don't know what this means. Then I got an email from Kelly Services wanting to know whether or not I wanted to become a building sub for $100 a day. I said, no. So I didn't even respond to that. That was not enough money. But our next topic will be school nightmares, and I expect to have some great tales. Look, I enjoyed these stories tonight. I don't know if I have this information that I need to have. Are you texting me, or Ellen, are you?
In the chat, I just sent it.
Okay, there it is. You know, my computer is kind of slow. I bought this computer right as I retired, so I would have new technology. And you know, when you're on a fixed income, new technology is not something you can take for granted. But I declare I need to take this whole machine, because I still have the box that came in downstairs in the basement. I need to take it and see why is it so slow. But that's another issue for another day, because I want you to know that our third place winner is Carol Bassell. Congratulations, Carol. I can't see her because of this.
No, she had to leave.
She left. Oh, that's right. Well, good, because I've been looking for it underneath this little chat message. Our second place winner is Beverly Williams. Congratulations, Beverly. And our first place winner is Julie. Congratulations, Julie. Listen, you guys are fantastic. We'd like to thank our sponsors one more time, Sally Perkins and Jim Obermaier, and the Nicholas Noyes Jr. Memorial Foundation, as well as our media sponsor, WFYI. And go around. I think there ought to be some kids who could tell some school nightmares. You know what I'm saying? Any other announcements anybody want to make?
The liars
You know,
contest.
I didn't hear you.
The liars contest.
Oh, you know, I've been telling all the kids at camp that our liars contest will be August 6th at 7 p.m. at the Pioneer Village. And all you have to do is come and bring us a tall tale, 5 minutes or less. Now, we tell the kids it's not right to lie, but I say it's more or less you tell a tale that's had a little yeast added to it. So there are categories for adults and for children. And we're really looking for those kids who can come in and tell us a tall tale. So I tried to give them examples, you know, like, you know, so hot yesterday that the corn in the field started popping. It was popcorn and it drifted over to one side and the cows in the field thought it was snow and 5 of them froze to death and some of them gave ice cream. That's a tall tale. So work on your tall tales and see what you can do at 7 p.m. at the Pioneer Village at the Indiana State Fair. We're looking forward to that. Anybody else got anything they want to add? Well, you know, my wine glass is almost empty, so I gotta go. It's been a pleasure being with you. Hope to see you again soon. Alice, call me when the cake is ready, okay? See ya. Bye-bye.